For more on the U.S. presidential race, I'm joined by Haroon Siddiqui. He is the former editorial page editor for the Toronto Star. He now writes a twice-weekly column for that newspaper, and we want to thank you for joining us. What's your takeaway? It seems folks pretty angry, and the messages from Trump and Sanders seem to resonate.
No, I think the greater story and the larger picture is the following, that as commentators have said, rightly so, that grassroots democracy in the United States is alive and well. People are upset with the establishment parties and so on. That's a given. The more depressing part of it is really, whereas left of center radicalism is articulated by Mr. Sanders and articulated very well. You may agree to disagree with him, that's fine. But the disagreement on the right, which is from Mr. Trump or Mr. Ted Cruz or Mr. Rubio, is very disappointing, because it's really, they are indulging in a great deal of demagoguery, great deal of racism, xenophobia, and so on. They're giving voice, it is said, in a democratic fashion, they're giving voice to the voiceless, but what are they giving voice to? They're giving voice to a kind of racism and xenophobia. We Mexicans are racist, we are going to build a wall, Muslims cannot be allowed into the United States, Mr. Rubio will close down the mosques. This is really sort of a Yahoo politics that one does not expect from mainstream parties of the largest democracy in the world.
Well, Haroon, you mentioned Trump. He had a pretty nationalistic message. We just played a clip from it. We're going to beat the Japanese, the Chinese, yes, the Mexicans. It sure seems to play well with his audience. The Republican Party establishment wants a candidate to rally around moving forward, but is Kasich that candidate, or is it still too much of a jumble, and does that continue to benefit Trump?
No, I think it's too much of a jumble, and that's, that's politics at work. It's rambunctious at the grassroots. That is the great strength of America. One should not be too disturbed by that. One should be disturbed by who are the leading candidates. Leading candidates are Mr. Trump. What is Mr. Trump saying? We all know what he's saying. Is that the kind of president the United States and the largest and the most powerful democracy in the world deserves or wants? It's really a reflection of the times. People have lost faith in their democracy. People have lost faith in their institutions, in their politics, understood. This is the world of post 9/11 world of Muslim terrorism. People are spooked, full of fear, understood. But they seem to have lost their confidence. They seem to have lost their bearings, which is a way of saying they have forgotten the very principles that made America great. What are those principles? Principles are democracy, civil rights, respect for each other's points of difference, multiculturalism, pluralism, equality, respect for other people's faith, and all those have gone by the boards. So, looking at this American scene from Canada, one doesn't find anything much uplifting about the race at this point.
Two dropouts, looks like Chris Christie and Carly Fiorina out on the Republican side. I'm curious if you think that changes the dynamic, and what can we expect to see on both sides moving forward in South Carolina and Nevada, do you think?
No, I think Mr. Sanders may not make it to the nomination, because the Clintons are known to have great strength in the South and so on. It is the Republican side, as I keep saying, that is more disturbing, because regardless of, do you want to pick between Mr. Trump and Mr. Ted Cruz or Mr. Rubio? One is worse than the other. So there's not much to recommend any of them. And this is not said because one agrees or disagrees with with right-wing or left-wing politics. It is the kind of message that they have been giving, and making false promises. I'm going to make America great. Well, can you tell us, please, how you're going to make America great? Are you going to change globalization? Are you going to change manufacturing? How are you going to replace the jobs that have already gone to China? There's no details. It is all sort of a kind of right-wing demagoguery, promising the moon, but very few specifics here. And more important than that, the kind of, on the international scene, if you see, Mr. Ted Cruz wants to carpet bomb Syria and Iraq. That's a policy. What would happen to children? What would happen to civilians? What would happen to women? No concern about that. Mr. Trump says he's going to bar Muslims from coming to the United States. Fine. I'm not dying to come to the United States in a Trump-led America. But is that the enunciation of American principles? Is this what made America the greatest democracy in the world? That's what's worrying.
Haroon Siddiqui joining us from Toronto. Thanks so much for your observations.